video from our history. And one of the things that has hurt us is the ongoing businesses around us. I've got a cast that I just haven't been able to run off because just things just keep hitting me and keep hitting me and keep hitting me. But I've got basically 15 companies that have benefited from not only chattel slavery, but they still are making money out here today, Gabe. And they're directly affecting us because what they did to us during slave times, they don't give any of that back. And I'm talking about bringing us on, whether it be for employment, all the way up to Brooks Brothers, where I think every American freedman who graduates from high school should be able to go to Brooks Brothers and get a free suit. I mean, that could be on the minimum, man. But I've got literally different companies that have benefited off of American freedmen since the early 1800s. And the reason I chose this today was because we've been having an issue. We've been having an issue with Norfolk Southern.
Oh,
and I've got a problem with Norfolk Southern from another level. Not only are they just running trains into each other and derailing and this, that, and the other, and we obviously know about the mistreatment of railroad workers of today, but I don't believe people really understand the history of railroad workers of yesterday. And where I have a problem with what they're doing with Norfolk Southern in Ohio and right here in my backyard in Van Buren, Michigan, repetitive derailments, and not anybody from Washington, D.C. has been up to Michigan, but Joe Biden flew his monkey ass over to Ukraine over the weekend on a creep tip. They said they snuck him over there and then dropped a $500 million check on Zelensky. See, my thing is, if you just gonna say you hate us, say you hate us so we can go find somebody else to vote for. But Biden keeps coming for American freedmen's vote, just like every other Democrat, but don't want to do nothing for us. This is where we start to say no. We start to stop and look exactly what they're doing to us. Now they're actually just trying to vote us out and bring in other bodies to fill our voting base shoes. You know, it's just so disrespectful. But one of the companies that has benefited since the early 1800s, about 1808, from what I know, Norfolk Southern played an integral part of American chattel slavery. And where they are right now, with all of these derailments and things like that, I believe there's going to be a ton of stuff that's going to come out that some of these derailments has been probably dealing with workers who were not maybe at the wheel, or they were, hey, there's literally been stories about some of these railroad workers being asleep at the wheel. They're sick on these trains. They don't get proper time off. Sometimes they get sick and get better, and they've never been able to get off the train because of the railroad schedule and the lack of manpower. We obviously know COVID decimated a lot of things. Well, it took a lot of railroad workers out of the paint. So where you might have been working for 12 days, now you're working for 24. Where you might have been working for 24 days, now you're working for 48. And these are people with families. These are people with families. These are people with lives, and they never get off these trains, and they're literally dying on these trains. So Norfolk Southern has had such an issue recently. I decided to go back because, like I said, I had this stuff ready to run a stream maybe a month and a half ago. And I know you're up on Dr. Darity, and I know you're up on From Here to Equality. But what I like to do is I like to go, I'm probably about my fourth time going through this book. I like to get into some of the audio where they talked about the treatment of railroad workers and how integral of a part American freedmen, or we were enslaved at that time, played in the building of the railroad. Then I want to go to and show you some data about Norfolk Southern, how and well, really what they owe us. Because when we talk about state initiatives, local initiatives, that's not the national debt. See, I know Norfolk Southern can't pay reparations to American freedmen and have that be it. But they're one of the companies who benefited off of chattel slavery, so they owe us too. And I want to talk about what they would owe us each. I'm talking each American freedman in just a minute after looking at this, and really hear your view first after you hear the audio. And then when I put the stats up, how viable this could be for us, and have that money be able to be used in the Freedmen's Bureau. We'll talk more about that. I don't want to put too much on you before, but please check this audio out, y'all. This audio is from Here to Equality, and it was the chapter of who benefited most off of slavery. So let me get into it here real quick, and then that'll give Brother Gabe a chance to catch his breath. I haven't said much. I ain't never had nobody on here, Gabe, to talk more than I do. So I'm feeling good about myself tonight. I'm feeling good about myself tonight. So let me get this right, and then we're going to check this audio out. Okay, I think I'm good there. And then we're going to go.
Enslaved blacks played a critical role in building the American railway system, whether they were the direct human property of the railroad companies or hired, rented from their owners. Theodore Cornweibel Jr. reports, in 1859, 1/3 of all Southern lines employed 100 or more slaves, ranging from 1,200 at work building the Atlantic and Gulf Railroad in Georgia, to 500 building the Vicksburg, Shreveport, and Texas Railroad, to 400 or more toiling on 7 other lines. In contrast, by 1859, no single plantation was home to as many as 1,200 slaves, and 400 bondsmen were to be found on only a very few large estates. Perhaps the largest single concentration of enslaved railroaders was the 1,493 men and 425 boys at work constructing the North Carolina Railroad in 1852. Whether for construction and maintenance or sometimes operations, Southern railroads could not do without enslaved black labor. Sometimes owners actually were reluctant to hire out their enslaved laborers because of the extreme danger associated with rail construction and train operations. If they did so, they often would take out insurance policies on their property, or they would structure contracts that precluded their property from working on the riskiest tasks. Of course, those contractual provisions were not always obeyed, leading contractors and slave owners to the courtroom. Racial stratification operated in the rail system, with enslaved blacks and subsequently emancipated blacks assigned the most dangerous work. Prior to the widespread adoption of air brakes and automatic couplers early in the 20th century, one of the riskiest assignments was the role of brakeman. Many railroads used slaves for this hazardous position, the lowest ranking on the train. Their main tasks were helping to stop the train and coupling and uncoupling cars.
Okay, I'm gonna stop that real quick right there, just to bring us up real quick, Gabe. They used us to stop the train, Gabe. Uh-oh, my audio, my fault. They used us to stop the train. I mean, so it's gonna go a little bit deeper. We still got about $1.41 to just cook on this. You know how dangerous it is to stop a bicycle. You know how dangerous it is to stop a motorcycle. You can't stop a car.
Right.
We're talking about a locomotive, and he's going to really actually break it down. I'm going to go back 15 seconds so people can understand what he just said. They used us to stop trains. So just listen to the rest of this. I went back 15 seconds. This is the most bizarre shit I had ever heard. And I've listened to it several times. Just listen.
Brakeman. Many railroads used slaves for this hazardous position, the lowest ranking on the train. Their main tasks were helping to stop the train and coupling and uncoupling cars. Brakemen lost their lives by falling off the tops of moving, swaying freight cars, especially at night or in inclement weather, while manually applying brakes on each car. Even on passenger trains, they had to jump back and forth from car to apply brakes. Coupling with link and pins required the brakeman to attach an oval iron link with an iron pin in a pocket at one end of one car, stand between it and the other car, and be ready to drop a pin as the new link entered the new car's pocket, and avoid being crushed as the two cars came together.
About a minute left on this. So it was either you did it or you didn't and got crushed. You didn't have too much leeway there. This is the pressure that was put on. This is supposed to be work. This is supposed to be something like, you know, this is the pressure that they had our men under. Not theirs, not anybody else. We obviously know there was nobody else. Nobody else was doing this kind of work. But the way this ends, just to hear how it ends, is so crazy. And then this why I'll need your assessment on just what you've heard here. But then I'll show you what Norfolk Southern. I just got to finish it. I'm sorry. Got to finish it. Yeah. So I'll keep running on.
Under improved safety conditions brought about by innovations in braking equipment, white laborers seized the brakeman positions, driving black workers out of the jobs. The history of railroad work is
So when the jobs became safe, we couldn't do those jobs anymore. Then the white people came in and stole those jobs. Okay, right. Just 45 seconds left.
Of a general American tendency to disregard the value of black life. Slaveholders who hesitated to hire out their human chattel to the railroads appear to be an exception, but not because they placed an intrinsic worth on black people. Rather, it was because they merely were seeking to protect their investment to assure a longer-term return. Whether pay was made to slave owners or directly to black laborers after slavery as wages, the following comment from Cornweibel is apposite. It is part of the perverse genius of capitalism that a dangerous job does not usually warrant a higher wage. Among the operating crews, brakemen were paid the least.
So the most dangerous job on the railroad was ours until it became not only less dangerous, just less lethal. And then we couldn't qualify for the job. We only qualified for it because we could die at such a high clip. And when they made the job safe enough for other people to work it, then that phased us out. This sounds much like the auto plants where you used to be a machinist working for the big three. But then when they started bringing in the engineers, if you didn't have the degree, they phased you out of the job and brought somebody in half your age and gave them half the pay, really, you know, what they do. So this type of situation, like I said, this is just one company, just one, because there's multiple railroads. This is just one railroad company that I'm speaking about. Is Norfolk Southern. Not saying that this specifically on From Here to Equality was talking about that, but just what you just heard and what we've talked about with the Freedmen's Bureau and not only the lack of resources and the lack of ability to achieve substantive livings and businesses and things like that. How can we turn that around so situations like this don't happen in Ward 5 going forward and around the country?
It's really an outstanding question, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because this is where the reparations frame is so illuminating. There's no question that all of these, there are several of these companies that have the same sort of characteristics, this exploitation, and that reparative justice is essential. And that we've got to, when we talk about facing history, we've got to dig into all of this. There's a subcommittee in the city council in Chicago that is doing some of this work, researching these companies. They've mostly been focused on banks, but you know, there's no, especially so the westernmost part of the Fifth Ward has an area called the Pocket, but that's that one part of the neighborhood. It's part of a larger neighborhood that's known as Greater Grand Crossing. Grand Crossing. And so we're, you know, for folks who are history buffs, Chicago, originally it was a transit hub, and it was the trains coming here. So there's opportunity to kind of hook on to that. I've got a train a half a block away from me. I've got tracks a half a block away from me that are the IC tracks, is what we call them. The Illinois Central train would run through those. Now the Metro mostly uses it, although we still have cargo trains using it. The bottom line is, what we understand from the work that's been done in terms of what the federal government owes because of its active orchestration of chattel slavery, is that we can quantify. If we can identify, we can quantify, and if we can quantify, we can create opportunity for redress.
Okay.
And so I think that every one of these companies owes a debt. What I believe is that the whole kind of inner network of what we need to do to actually systematically get what is owed follows reparations. That's what I believe. I think you need the capacity of a massive lobbying organization, of which, what you would really need is for, if freedmen are all looking at, I think it's a $750,000 to $950,000 cash payment. There are all kinds of numbers people throw out there. But
sure.
When you have assets like that, you can pay into a collective that just has a lobby, just like the gun lobby has in DC. It's a further reparative justice lobby. And so you can systematically go after these companies. You can have a research arm of that looks at what, this is, and you've got this really important piece of information up here that talks about the kind of value that was attached to these lives. And there are lots of ways to look at that. Certainly we can repudiate this as absolutely offensive. On the other hand, it helps us to start to quantify the harm. And so now we're talking about employees of these train lines being, I'm sure, documented somewhere, and we can use that as a kind of an aggregate and start to develop a formula. But I think you need that capacity, because this injustice is everywhere, the entire country, which is why reparations is so powerful and important, because it's a thoroughgoing, it's a forensic audit of an entire nation, public and private. And I believe with that capacity, we could bring companies like this really to account for what they've done. But it's so horrible. I have to tell you, on the one hand, being in the movement, you learn so much. It's so enlightening, and it's always better to be awake than to be asleep.
Right.
But when you do go to sleep, it's a troubled sleep, because you recognize that, whatever measure of comfort and luxury we have in this country came at the most terrible price imaginable. That we were savages to people who in no way, shape, or form ever had done anything. Not that anyone would have deserved what had happened to enslaved Black American citizens, but the complete wanton savagery is our legacy. That's where we live. We live in that country.
Right. I look at all of these things being culpable. I don't put anybody singularly responsible except for the United States government. And that's why I say companies like Norfolk, and I want to bring up, because he's out of the bunker tonight, but Brother Otis just put something up. Andrew Jackson Beard is best known for patenting several rail car coupler innovations between 1887 and 1905. Born of tragedy, he lost a leg coupling cars. His inventions reduced that type of injury. So he took his injury, his life-threatening injury, his life-altering injury, and built patents off of it. This is the ingenuity. This is the brilliance. This is the magnificence. This is Black boy magic that we don't hear about.
That's
this man lost a leg and went on to make trains safer. He could have went and sat in a corner and died crazy somewhere. But he took that detriment and turned it around and invented things to make this profession, because it's a profession. They might have not wanted to say it was a profession, but it was a profession.
Yeah.
Well, it was a profession to them, but we did the labor as grunts, and really we were just carnage. We weren't even really grunt workers. I mean, you could leave. There's probably a better chance of you dying on that job than it is for a policeman to die on their job every day. I mean, you had a chance to just die. Now, I know cops can die every day, but there's a better chance for you dying working for the railroad back then than it is for you walking out of your house as a law enforcement officer. So this situation with Norfolk, this is my axe to grind with Norfolk. So Norfolk had a history in the slave trade. The Mobile and Girard Company, which is now part of Norfolk Southern, offered slaveholders $180, which would be $3,379 today, a piece for enslaved Africans they would rent to the railroad for 1 year. $180 for 1 year, $3,300 in today's dollars, according to the records. The Central of Georgia, another company aligned with Norfolk Southern line today, valued its slaves at $31,303. Now, that's $663,033 today dollars. I just did this math, and you tell me if this would be plausible. If we took a company and just identified Norfolk Southern as detrimental. Now, they owe 40 million American freedmen. I mean, well, we're going by lineage, so I know they said there's 40 million of us, but I don't know if that's just 40 million black folks or 40 million American freedmen. But I just want to go with what you got in Ward 5. You've got 29,000 American freedmen because you got 58% of 50,000 people. So you got 29,000 right. American freedmen. If we took 29,000 American freedmen and gave them $663,000 over time, I'm a realist. I'm not saying they got to come up with all this money, because they're going to not only come up with it in the 5th ward, they're going to come up with it in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, however many wards you got in Chicago. But I'm talking about across the country. But let's just focus on your ward, 29,000 American freedmen. That'd be about $22,000 and some change, I believe. It's a little bit more, because I did 663 divided. It was like 22.8 or something like that. So say 22.8 per American freedman in today's dollars. Say if they all got 660, they broke that down, 22,000 a year or what was it? Hold on one second. So if we broke, I'm sorry. No, what I did was, excuse me, I'm sorry. My math is off a little bit. I'm getting a little slap happy. 663.33. Okay. And then it was 54 years. Going to divide that by 54 years. So that's $12,278 per American freedman per year for 54 years. That's how many years that Norfolk Southern took part in the slave trade with workers. Now you've got 29,000. So 29,000 American freedmen, we're just going to do it times 29. That's 356,073,278. Now that's everybody, but paying it out over time. They're not going to come up with this money. We want it to happen over a 54-year period. So take that money and divide it over 54 years. This is pumping into the 5th ward. $6,593,949, roughly. Okay. That's money that could come into the ward, could come into the Freedmen's Bureau, and be able to not only put businesses on the map, keep businesses moving, put kids through school. We're talking all types of stuff that could happen. And that's just from Norfolk Southern. This ain't no other railroad. Or you can just do whatever you want to with it. But let's just say, because reparations is going to happen on a national scale, this would just be from one company. And we know that there's tons of companies that benefited off the slave trade. So when we break things down and we talk about local repair, and I know that Chicago is a railroad hub, why ain't Chicago going at Norfolk Southern for what they did to American freedmen and enslaved people because they're owed money.
Right. This goes back to my position that Chicago is not in the business of lifting up its black citizens, black American citizens, because what you're saying, if we just talk about constituents, citizens, regular people, and I'm the mayor, and you say, Mr. Mayor, I can bring in $6 million a year for the next 40 years to this ward. I say, where do I sign? That sounds fantastic. I'm gonna be elected for life, because that's any ethnic group that you can do that for is 30%. We're 30% black, 30% Latino, 30% white. You're gonna help any of those groups. I'm starting with the 30% base in a city where, you know, elections are often 25-30% of the people coming out to vote. So you have to actively not want resources to go to a certain group of people to not pursue this, because this for a government, this is a side project. I put 3 of my lawyers out of my, you know, army of lawyers that the city has. I spend so much time spending money on my cops. I can't spend a little bit of money bringing, you know, so there's a vested interest in not pursuing the railroads. And, you know, Chicago politicians, whenever you try to do anything that has to do with the railroads, they'll defend the railroad first. We try to get an embankment cleaned, and you would think the railroads had voted for the alderman. They'll say, well, you know, those embankments, the railroads are doing the best they can. They have a lot of territory to cover. It's like they're talking about their child and why they, you know, stole some candy. They get an excuse for everything. So you know, it really is a vested interest. And what I think is that when you start to make wealth move differently than it moves now in a profound way, and what you're talking about is facing history. There's a lot of interest that understand the floodgate you're opening just by what you just did on the air live just now, just by the math you just did now. If across the country people understood that, that's dangerous. That's dangerous knowledge, because like you said, now add up all the railroads, add the insurance companies with a very similar kind of scenario, add the banks. You know, there's all of these companies that benefited from specifically the suffering of, because it's not just that
I'm gonna do that stream this week, damn it. I'm doing that stream because I got them. I mean, I got these type of facts about 14 other companies, Gabe. And
you gotta write a book, man. You gotta write a book.
Hey man, you know what? I got a 3-year-old at my helmet every day right now, so I'm trying to just survive,
I take
bro.
It back.
I'm trying to just survive.
That's a full-time job, man.
It is, and my lady, she gets much of the grunt work, but I got that part of the work where, you know, I'm grandpa, so they hit me and slap me, and you know, they take all that physical energy from me, and I'm the cooker. You know, I'm known as the cooker here. You know, I cook. So I love the fact that she's in my life the way, because she is keeping me young and she's keeping me up. But this type of thing is what fuels me, because I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for my grandkids. I'm doing this for my kids, for my grandkids, but because they're not going to have the same accesses that I had. You know, I was talking to a brother today. I hate still being the youngest black man to ever own a restaurant in the city that I grew up in. I don't care no more. I want there to be more people like me. I want there to be more young African American, if I got to say that for y'all tonight, but American freedmen entrepreneurs. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with barbershops. There's nothing wrong with barbecue restaurants. There's nothing wrong with car detailing and car washes. But that's what they want us to do. What we really need to move. And they want it to end there. Don't open up 2 shops, because now what you're trying to do. Now you're trying to really move the needle. They'd rather have you struggling in your mom and pop shop. But you start talking about multiple location and franchising and this, that, and the other. Now you're starting to mess with that infrastructure. And that's what they don't want. And that's what the Freedmen's Bureau could be. That's what a national schedule of reparations could be. But starting with companies like this on the local end, it gives us a foothold to be able to get the accesses, because the government's going to be slow to come. We already know with the reparations. They were slow to talk about it. They're going to be slow to come with the check. But companies like this, dude, if you still want to function out here, You better cough up what you know we're owed and what you did to our people. And it just ain't Norfolk. I'm picking on Norfolk because they've been doing craziness out here in Ohio and Michigan. So they're the elephant in the room right now. Just like I want to segue because I damn near kept you for 2 hours. I want to segue to we were just talking about policing. I want to segue to what your platform is your public safety strategy that's holding police accountable. Because I scream qualified immunity, and be like, what are you talking about? And people don't realize how much that would